Welcome back. Thanks for watching. If you've seen the other three, that's great. I hope you're going to keep up with this all the way through. We're up to the C's in the alternative indie collection. The first one to start with, so I'm just going to get straight into it. There aren't many. There's no digipacks this time. They're jewel cases, although there are a couple with slip. I don't know what you call them. Jewel cases with card sleeves on them. I'm going to start with Caribou. And some of you may have heard of Caribou. Now, this is the first time I've started to doubt my cataloguing of my collection, because Caribou is kind of electronica in as much as it's sort of experimental and involves synthesizers. But I believe he also plays guitar, and there might be some samples in there and things like that. This one used to be under the name Manitoba. He's from Canada. And this is a re-release, so it's sort of a double album. It's kind of come out more recently than the original. And of course, there was another band called Manitoba, so Caribou had to change his name to Caribou. And this re-release is under the name Caribou, but you may find it. It's called Start Breaking My Heart. I'll show that again. Start Breaking My Heart, and that one is under Caribou now. But the one album that everybody probably, anyone who's interested in alternative indie music or electronica, so there is a bit of a crossover here. I think I chose a particular album that came under indie, experimental, and so I kind of classified all of his albums under indie, and that's Swim. So this is sort of like the breakthrough album, and it is probably the one to get if you're interested in Caribou. It's a very good album. I do like it, but I actually got this one, Andorra, afterwards, and I really like this one. And this has this kind of summery 60s feel about it, so consider Andorra and Swim as quite good companion albums. There's nothing wrong with this first one either, and obviously I've got 3 albums, and I've said before, if I've got 3 albums, it's worth investigating. I think Caribou's great. I haven't bought other albums. There are quite a few out there now, and I haven't kept up with it. That's sometimes, where do you draw the line? Where do you stop collecting somebody? But if you wanted to just have one of these albums, check them out. You may choose Andorra, you may choose Start Breaking My Heart, you may choose Swim, but Swim was the one that really, I think, got a lot of attention. Moving right along, because I don't want to take up too much time. I want to do these a little quicker, and then we'll get to the halfway point, and we'll start discussing sort of maybe what the difference between alternative and popular music is. But I'll just see how I go, because there's quite a few of them, and now we've got Cat Power. And I think some of you may know about Cat Power, and she's great. She's sort of mercurial in terms of her performances. I did see her live. It wasn't a great performance. Not all on her. I think the audience was pretty damn hopeless. There was a lot of talking around the bar and stuff, and I think it just put her off. It's kind of odd that some people go to events, and if there is a bar right near the stage, they sort of act like there's just happens to be some musician that's turned up on the day, or some kind of, lounge music playing, and they're just kind of chilling out and drinking, whereas I went to actually see Cat Power play. So it was a little annoying that gig did not go well, and she just seemed to stop and start a lot. But I think that is actually, she's incredibly shy and self-conscious, so I think that just, it was a bad dynamic, and maybe her head wasn't in the right place. That one's Moonpix, and this one is You Are Free. Now, I think out of these earlier albums, I like this one the most. But again, investigate Cat Power. We have got 3. We've actually got 4. We've got 3 in jewel case. Now, the name of this one is actually What Would the Community Think? This one's kind of... I was playing it the other day because I thought, I better start playing some of these before I talk about them. I'm not going to perhaps do that every time. It's... I wouldn't say lo-fi, but it's kind of very raw, and it's, her music does have a degree of emotion to it. I think it's got some power in that respect, but wouldn't be to everyone's taste. So, maybe listen to a few different albums, don't just grab one, because I think she can sort of move between being quite introspective and then some that are really boisterous and outgoing. And this brings me to what I believe to be her best album, which is Cat Power, the Greatest. And this is one that's in a card sleeve So you may see it like this. This isn't a special edition at all. It hasn't got any extras on it, I don't think. But this has some sentimental value for my wife and myself because we heard, I think the track is called Willie, which is sort of the middle track, I think number 6. Oh, there's a lot of reflection there. And we heard that in a bar, I think it was called the Old Town Pub in New York. And it was just an amazing track to hear in this really amazing pub or bar. I think calling things pubs is a bit of a UK thing, but Cat Power, the greatest. This is an all-round fantastic album. So I highly recommend this album. And I think what gives it, I mean, just her voice is amazing. I think she's sort of at her peak. And she did have in a lot of session musicians that really sort of lifted the musicality of it and just made it just a stunning album. So that would be my pick, and a highly recommended album to look into is Cat Power, the greatest. The next one I want to look at, just moving right along, is actually Britpop, the Charlatans. So they're probably underrated. They've probably not gotten the same amount of attention a lot of other British bands. They sort of formed maybe a second tier in that sort of Britpop era with, you know, Blur and Oasis being at the forefront of it. Another band that's really good is Pulp. But the Charlatans, I would give them a look in. And I've got a couple of albums. This is probably my favourite. Again, for sentimental reasons. It's sort of one that I listened to during a period of time in which a lot of the songs resonated with me, if I can say resonated. It's overused that, but it's a fairly solid album, but it is that Britpop sound, you know, so it's quite jangly, it's quite upbeat, and it does sort of have that sort of 60s poppy reference to it. I mean, that happens with a lot of new music, that you can sort of hear that psychedelic sound coming through, but the Charlatans are worth checking out, and this is actually the other album, the only other album I have. There's a few albums out there, but this one, Some Friendly, has some really good tracks on it. And I think this is a standout for a lot of people. That's just taking the card off, but the cover doesn't change. So you're looking out for that cover. So check that one out. This is a special edition. This one is a 20th anniversary edition. So just to show you that card. So sometimes, you know, with CDs, if they want to, you know, being the big corporates and the record labels, if they want to sort of sell an old CD again, they might put in a new version with B-sides on it, or they might collapse 2 albums together. They do all sorts of things to try and upsell things. And I think the extras on this are actually pretty good. So there are alternative takes, you know, studio takes and things like that. And it's always interesting, the Beatles just do to this sort of thing to the nth degree, as I'm sure you well know with a lot of their new releases, where they're often got the behind the scenes sort of studio takes, and some of those to me stand out, and we'll get to the Beatles at some point. I haven't got a huge Beatles collection. There's some people out there that you should go to who will talk to you about the Beatles no end, but I highly respect them, of course, and that's what a lot of the Britpop sound comes from, is sort of that Beatles era psychedelic, more from, you know, Strawberry Fields onwards. And lastly, and this is it for the C's, there's Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah. So you may not have heard of these guys. They released this album all on their own without a label. They just have a URL website. I don't know, it might still be going, but this is you know, pre-social media, and it's of a time when they would have been beholden to getting things into stores, maybe getting things on the radio to get some attention. They did. They got a couple of tracks off this, and they got a lot of good reviews just from a self-release. So that's pretty impressive. And I heard them on the radio, and I thought, yeah, I like that. I'll give them a go. And I actually turned around and got their second album. The best way to describe this music is that it's quite sort of cacophonous, chaotic to start with. Well, there's elements of that, and then it sort of straightens up. So you get that sort of light and dark kind of aspects to it. Not dark as in brooding, but just sort of like bright and cheerful, and then sort of heavy and loud. I guess it's kind of got a punky sensibility, which sort of fits with the idea of self-release. So definitely worth checking out Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah. I would say that they sort of their trajectory was such they got a lot of attention for their first album, not so much for the second, and then I haven't really kept up with them either. But I did enjoy this, and I did play it recently, and it is worth investigating. So that's the Seas. I can see the battery is running out, so I'm going to leave it there.